I just have to ask you, Mr. Secretary, who is running this department? Is Aaron Siri running the department? Are you running the department?
Oh, ASIP has nothing to do with the vaccine court. Nothing.
No, just the question is he running the department? Are you running the department? This Aaron Siri guy has a huge, apparently, influence.
Yeah, you're just filled with mischaracterizations. If you want to ask me about something, I will. But
Well, let me just ask you this. And so, Mr. Siri,
you're going to talk and you're going to grandstand, but you're not going to get at the truth.
Well, Mr. Siri is actually, he's gone public with the whole thing now. He's on X. And
Senator Angela Alsobrooks walked into this confrontation with undeniable evidence. What we are witnessing is the unmasking of a shadow power network that Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was completely unprepared for. The focus isn't just standard political bickering, it's determining whether a private anti-vaccine lawyer is manipulating the national healthcare system. When Alsobrooks pulled out the posts on X, RFK Jr. could only mount a weak defense by accusing her of grandstanding. However, Alsobrooks had the entire file mastered, from the personnel shakeups in the vaccine committee to the comments targeting black children. Keep watching until the final minutes, because the moment Alsobrooks declares she has the tape is a classic masterclass in how to dismantle a government official desperately trying to evade the truth. Don't forget to hit subscribe, because when national health policy shows signs of being pulled by strings, you need to see the evidence with your own eyes.
thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Secretary. You're familiar with Aaron Siri, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay, that's because he served both as your lawyer in your personal capacity, and he's a lawyer for an anti-vaccine group as well. Is Mr. Siri on the federal government payroll?
No, he is not.
No, he's not. Okay, so that I find that interesting because he is apparently having a really outsized influence on you. And in fact, according to her testimony, Dr. Monterez last August said that during a very contentious argument with you or conversation that you told her to talk to Mr. Siri so that she could fall in line with his vaccine policies. You let him present to your now illegal and discredited vaccination committee. And then this month, you signed an updated charter for the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices to focus on vaccine risk after Aaron Siri urged you to do so. So, despite him not being on the government payroll, it looks like he is clearly, for you, he's a top advisor in your agency. Now, last month, Mr. Siri threatened to sue you if you didn't add hundreds of health conditions to the vaccine injury compensation programs. And just like that, you removed members of the Advisory Commission on Childhood Vaccinations to pave the way for changes.
Alsobrooks completely bypasses boring rhetorical questions. She pins a direct timeline of events into the hearing record as core evidence. The interference is laid bare. Siri issues a threat of litigation, and immediately RFK Jr. purges the committee personnel. The core argument here is that a private figure drawing zero government salary holds the power of life and death over the Department of Health's directives. Watch how RFK Jr. flounders when the evidence shifts from general policy to nominated individuals, and finally points straight at his own personal record. At this point, Alsobrooks is exposing a critical vulnerability in the independence of the state apparatus. When a federal agency agrees to pivot its strategic goals from protecting public health to obsessing over vaccine risks solely due to pressure from an outsider, it is proof of a systemic collapse. RFK Jr. is unmasked not as a resolute leader, but as a puppet manipulated by legal maneuvers.
For you, he's a top advisor in your agency. Now, last month, Mr. Siri threatened to sue you if you didn't add hundreds of health conditions to the vaccine injury compensation programs. And just like that, you removed members of the Advisory Commission on Childhood Vaccinations to pave the way for changes.
The legal chokehold lies right here. Siri uses the threat of lawsuits to extort the Department of Health. Normally, a secretary would hand this over to the government's legal department to defend the agency. But how did RFK Jr. react? He outright dismissed sitting committee members to pave the way for Siri's demands. Alsobrooks' finishing question, who is running this department, goes far beyond a standard interrogation. It is an indictment. It strikes a fatal blow to the pride of the man in power, forcing him into a corner. Either bow his head and admit to being incompetent and manipulated, or confess to facilitating an internal purge to satisfy private interests.
Influence.
Yeah, you're just filled with mischaracterizations. If you want to ask me about something, I will. But
let me just ask you this. And so, Mr. Siri,
you're going to talk and you're going to grandstand, but you're not going to get at the truth.
Well, Mr. Siri is actually, he's gone public with the whole thing now. He's on X. And
when completely deadlocked by glaring facts, the only remaining option is a personal attack. RFK Jr. clings to the familiar tactic of the cornered, blaming the opponent of mischaracterizations and grandstanding. This is a ploy to distract public opinion from the core violations. He doesn't deny firing the committee members. He doesn't deny signing the new charter. He only fixates on criticizing the attitude of the questioner. However, at a high-level hearing, attitude cannot cover up the evidentiary record.
Your vaccine policies. In fact, he wrote on X, I have no doubt RFK Jr., this is his quote, wants to update the table, and the only reason that he wouldn't is because the White House won't let him. So is the White House preventing you from updating the VSIP table?
Aaron Siri is an American citizen. He has a right to say what he wants.
He does.
He
But I'm
doesn't
just asking you, is the White House preventing you from updating this? Is Mr. Siri correct about that
updating the vaccine.
table?
No, they are not.
Okay. Now, regarding the new CDC.
Moving into the next phase, Alsobrooks shifts the axis of attack. This time, she uses Aaron Siri's own statements on the X platform to tighten the noose around RFK Jr. Siri himself smugly boasted about his power, declaring that RFK Jr. desperately wants to change the compensation table but is being blocked by the White House. This is an incredibly vicious attack. Alsobrooks forces RFK Jr. to swallow one of two bitter pills. If he admits Siri is right, it means confirming severe internal turmoil with the White House, while proving Siri knows every inside move of the department. If he rejects Siri's words, as he just did with "No, they are not," it means he is forced to publicly slap his closest ally in the face on national television.
Director nominee, part of the new team that you said would revolutionize the CDC. Mr. Siri said that the pick will likely be a disaster and has said the only thing that Schwartz will likely restore is the CDC to business as usual. He said that this is his quote, left to your own devices, you wouldn't have even chosen her, and that she is, and I quote Mr. Siri here, the queen of mandating vaccines. So is Aaron Siri wrong about this new nominee, or is the president?
Well, I guess.
Alsobrooks continues to carve into this fracture with a core personnel issue, the CDC director's seat. Siri's anti-vaccine camp is utterly outraged by the newly selected nominee. Siri labels her the queen of mandating vaccines and asserts that left to his own devices, RFK Jr. would never have chosen this figure. The trap is set so meticulously that it locks every exit. If RFK Jr. speaks up to defend the CDC nominee, he will betray his own core base of supporters. And if he echoes Siri, he is directly defying a presidential appointment.
Nominee, or is the president?
Well, I guess Aaron Siri doesn't have much influence on me after all, does he? So you can't have it both ways of saying he has an outside influence on our department.
Oh, is he
at
right?
the
I'm
same
just asking
time,
a question.
He's suing me and criticizing me or something that he for a policy that I've made that he doesn't like. So,
Well,
And this is perhaps the sharpest and rarest counterattack from RFK Jr. throughout the entire hearing. He spots the logical bottleneck in Alsobrooks' chain of attacks. He turns the tables by pointing out the paradox. You cannot simultaneously accuse a man of manipulating my entire agency while presenting evidence that this guy is frantically cursing and threatening to sue simply because I won't do what he wants. This rebuttal buys RFK Jr. a few brief seconds to breathe. He tries to redraw the picture of his relationship with Siri, that he is not a puppet on a string, but an independent leader under fire from a disgruntled citizen. If the hearing concluded right here, perhaps RFK Jr. could have walked away with some remaining dignity. However, Alsobrooks didn't step in here to play a defensive tug-of-war when the macro policies hit a dead end. She pulled out the most destructive weapon, the personal record.
does he have an outside influence or not?
Well, he
Because
said,
you're arguing out of
let me go
both
to my
sides of
next
your
question.
mouth.
Mr. Secretary, my next question. Now, you've had some trouble with the truth. I've seen it myself during
What?
your appearances before Congress. And as we all saw clearly during your exchange last week with Congresswoman Sewell, can you admit today that you said every black kid can get reparented on a wellness farm? Can you admit that you said that?
Can get reparented on a wellness.
Well, let me read exactly what you said. You said every black kid is now just standard, put on Adderall, on SSRIs, benzos, which are known to induce violence, and those kids are going to have a chance to go somewhere and get reparented, to live in a community where there'll be no cell phones, no screens. You know, you claimed, in fact, you went on to say, actually, the whole transcript was even worse. You said that if you could, you would send, quote, every black kid, again, your words, not mine, to go live on farms and work. Is that your
I would have to.
The pace of the confrontation suddenly accelerates. The focus is dragged from the power corridors of Washington straight down into the dark corners of the secretary's personal ideology. Alsobrooks no longer cares about the vaccine committee or the lawsuits. She strikes a direct blow at his character and extreme racist views. Pay close attention to Alsobrooks' phrasing. You've had some trouble with the truth. An opening that seems gentle, but carries highly lethal damage before delivering the decisive strike. The exposed quote is a political and social disaster, proposing to uproot black children from their families, completely ban electronic devices, exile them to farms for reparenting and forced labor, is the ghost of the worst eras of oppression and segregation in American history. The dangerous nature of this statement doesn't just stop at racism. It is even more terrifying when uttered by the man holding the lifeblood of national health and child welfare programs. Can a nation entrust the health of millions of children to someone heavily burdened with an ideology of isolation and rehabilitation, targeted at a specific group of people?
Hear that recording, because
Well, I have the
I
recording.
have no memory of saying anything like that.
Yeah, well, I actually have the recording that I can give to you, but it is absolutely what you said. And if you want me to play it, I can play
But
it.
if you ask me what my opinion is, I do not believe that every black kid should be reparented.
I have no memory of saying anything like that. This is the familiar life preserver of those standing in the dock, a classic legal sophistry, neither admitting nor denying, just creating a blank space in memory to dodge perjury. RFK Jr. clings to the hope that by challenging the original evidence, he can stall for time and squeeze through the narrow door of this humiliating moment. But he drastically underestimated Alsobrooks' preparation. I actually had the recording here. That is a devastating final blow, extinguishing all arguments instantly. Alsobrooks didn't come here with just empty written notes. She brought the sharpest physical evidence. The warning, "If you want me to play it, I can play it," is an ultimatum, slamming shut every escape route for RFK Jr. at this point. The truth is no longer a vague concept to bicker over. It is a cold, hard audio file, ready to be blasted on the Senate speakers.
On a wellness farm or whatever, and I have never believed that.
Well, you said it, sir. I have the video here. In fact,
I'm
your
telling
own
you,
uncle-
I don't believe it. That's not my vision for our country.
Well,
or
I'm
for the
glad
black
because it was
community.
ignorant to say, it was dangerous, and it was irresponsible.
Well, if I said it, I apologize, but I'd have to see the transcript.
Backed into a corner, with no way to retreat, and unable to argue stubbornly against a tape recording sitting right on the table, RFK Jr. is forced to surrender the white flag on his stance. He struggles to salvage his current image by declaring that it is not his belief or perspective, desperately trying to draw a clear line between what slipped out and what is truly believed. This wasn't just a debate, it was an autopsy of a corrupted system. Alsobrooks exposed the worst-case scenario: scientific committees purged by outside lawsuits, health policies hijacked by shadow lobbyists, and a cabinet secretary haunted by his own extremist past. Transparency isn't given, it's forced. When facing evasion, you don't just ask questions, you bring the receipts, lock down the exits, and drop the tape. So, who runs our national health apparatus now? Scientists or shadow lobbyists? Drop your thoughts below. Does hiding a dangerous past disqualify a leader? Keep questioning, and never let power operate in the dark. See you next time.
Greetings, and welcome to our in-depth political and legal analysis bulletin. At this very moment, the entire justice system of the United States of America is facing an unprecedented institutional crisis. Through the proceedings of the recent Watershed Senate hearing, the head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, Director Kash Patel, officially confirmed a reality that the Washington elite has constantly sought to cover up. The nation's highest law enforcement agency has indefinitely suspended all prosecutorial efforts against the client network, listed in the Black Book of the Jeffrey Epstein criminal organization. Subjected to rigorous prosecutorial scrutiny and questioning by Senator Adam Schiff, the logical structure of the FBI director's arguments revealed severe legal fractures. These fractures are not merely a weakness in hearing skills. They expose a systematic cover-up process. More alarmingly, this process is not manipulated by underground forces, but is tolerated and protected by the state executive apparatus itself. In today's bulletin, we will cast aside all partisan lenses. Instead, we will place the entire transcript of this confrontation on the scale of legal science. The analytical process will follow a single, logical axis, from redefining the criminal nature of the Epstein organization, analyzing the value of newly declassified evidence, dissecting the sophistry in the FBI's operational procedures, to exposing the signs of obstruction of justice behind bars, and finally, assessing the catastrophic consequences for a republic when the scales of justice are privatized. To accurately measure the magnitude and gravity of this hearing, the first and mandatory step is to redefine the legal framework applied to the Jeffrey Epstein file. Through the lens of the RICO Act, Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, the structure established and operated by Jeffrey Epstein went far beyond the definition of a conventional sex trafficking ring. This was a transnational criminal organization sophisticatedly designed to weaponize the sexual exploitation of minors for the purpose of collecting and storing sensitive data. The ultimate goal of this network was to establish a massive-scale blackmail system targeting individuals holding core power in society. The heart of the entire investigation, and also the invaluable asset of this organization, is the Black Book, a database system detailing the identities, contact information, and itineraries of the clients who participated in the network. Any entity, whether an individual or a government organization, that gains control of this book automatically holds the power to dominate and manipulate the political lifelines of the upper echelon of leadership. Upon assuming the position of FBI director, Kash Patel made a series of commitments regarding the removal of information barriers and once publicly confirmed that the agency was in possession of the Black Book. However, in the current context, the investigative roadmap targeting Epstein's client files and accomplices has been completely blockaded. Senator Adam Schiff's appearance at the questioning podium was not aimed at gathering a procedural explanation. Based on the constitutional oversight authority of the legislative branch, he demanded that the FBI be held accountable for this operational freeze while simultaneously investigating whether executive power is being used to carve out a criminal immunity zone for high-ranking officials. The crux of the entire hearing unfolded when Adam Schiff submitted a decisive piece of documentary evidence, fully meeting the standards for court admissibility. The official deposition transcript of Ghislaine Maxwell, considered the second in command, operational brain of the Epstein organization. The legal value of this document is further solidified as the person who directly conducted the interview was Todd Blanche, a seasoned criminal lawyer who formerly served as defense counsel for President Donald Trump. The contents of this transcript contain a testimony capable of redirecting the entire landscape of the investigation in an effort to defend the argument that high-status individuals sought out Epstein not for sexual needs. Maxwell inadvertently provided a verbatim testimony as follows. There are extraordinary people, and some are in your cabinet, who you value as your coworkers. If they want sexual favors, they will find it. They don't need to come to Epstein for that. From the perspective of criminal investigation protocols, the noun cabinet is not a metaphor. It establishes an entirely new jurisdictional boundary and provides investigators with an extremely clear, probable cause. The suspects are now concentrated within the top leadership group of the executive branch. The involvement of high-ranking officials elevates this from a federal criminal case to a direct threat to national security. The scenario where a cabinet official is at risk of being blackmailed by forces holding Epstein's data is a catastrophic one for the integrity of national policies. Therefore, this testimony creates a mandatory legal obligation requiring the FBI to immediately launch a comprehensive screening investigation targeting former and current members of the government. Based on this legal imperative, Schiff launched a direct question to test the investigative agency's compliance with the law. Who are those cabinet members that Ghislaine Maxwell explicitly named? Faced with the weight of the evidence from Maxwell's transcript, the defensive tactics employed by FBI Director Kash Patel exposed two severe fractures in legal principles and logical thinking. First, the fallacy of a lack of leads. The FBI director adamantly refused to declassify the identities of the cabinet members, simultaneously offering a defensive rationale for the agency's hesitation. There is no credible investigative lead to proceed with prosecuting other individuals. Adam Schiff did not hesitate to use the logical method of reductio ad absurdum, proof by contradiction, to break this argument. He questioned, so is it your testimony today before the Senate that in all that massive volume of files, Jeffrey Epstein did not provide human trafficking services to anyone else except himself? That Epstein's client list actually consists of exactly one single name, evaluating the issue based on criminology and forensic financial analysis, a criminal enterprise controlling cash flows of tens of millions of dollars, maintaining an intercontinental private aviation system and owning isolated islands, absolutely could not exist and sustain operating costs solely to serve a single client, its creator. For the head of the National Investigative Agency to cling to the hypothesis of a lone perpetrator with no clients is a blatant denial of the most fundamental investigative principles. The FBI forces do not lack evidence or intelligence gathering capabilities. In reality, they are actively applying the right to remain silent, refusing to trace the financial and aviation data trails that are already sitting in their archives. Second, the contradiction in the standards of applying power. The FBI's double standard was exposed in the very first minutes of the hearing, when the Senate committee questioned the decision to fire a series of FBI agents who had participated in the Donald Trump or January 6 investigation files. Kash Patel utilized a defensive linguistic trick. No individual at the FBI is fired alone for the reason of being assigned to those cases. In the realm of administrative law, emphasizing the adverb alone is a tacit admission that political factors in the handling of sensitive cases, DID, indeed constitute a part of the personnel disciplinary decision. From here, a profound contradiction in law enforcement standards emerges. The FBI, under Patel's direction, demonstrates extreme strictness, ready to invent administrative errors to purge subordinate investigators when they touch upon the director's political faction. But conversely, they demand an absurdly perfect evidence standard as a pretext to suspend the investigation into cabinet officials implicated in the pedophile ring. The decisive blow that Adam Schiff delivered to completely demolish Patel's defensive line was not based on testimonial documents, but was built on a series of administrative decisions, constituting signs of obstruction of justice. Schiff outlined an incredibly tight legal timeline. immediately after Ghislaine Maxwell provided testimony regarding the presence of cabinet members to federal officials, her incarceration status was abruptly changed. The destination of the transfer decision was not a maximum security detention facility, but a minimum security facility, an environment that completely contradicts the strict federal confinement standards mandatorily prescribed for highly dangerous sex offenders. When Kaj Patel attempted to shed responsibility by blaming the independent decision of the Bureau of Prisons, BOP, Schiff cornered him into a dead end. You are expecting the American people to believe that the Bureau of Prisons made the decision on their own. Immediately after this interview, with absolutely no connection to what she just testified, to transfer her to an improperly regulated confinement environment. In corruption crime investigation protocols, the coincidence in timing is the most crucial legal indicator to establish evidence of a quid pro quo transaction. Testimony capable of damaging the cabinet was used as collateral in exchange for an abnormal relaxation in sentencing conditions. The FBI director's declaration of having no responsibility to track the transfer of inmates steps beyond the boundaries of administrative irresponsibility. It constitutes an act of complicity, deliberately turning a blind eye to a gross interference in the independent judicial process. Exhausted of legal arguments to rebut this ironclad logical chain, Kaj Patel concluded his cross-examination by resorting to the ad hominem, personal attack method aimed at the questioner. According to litigation principles, when a party ceases presenting legal arguments and shifts to insulting their opponent, that party has officially confirmed their defeat and the total collapse of their argumentative system. Analyzed through the lens of constitutional law and state power structure theories, the transcript of this hearing has unmasked a particularly dangerous reality unfolding within the federal government apparatus. First, the principle of independence of the Federal Bureau of Investigation has been practically neutralized. Investigative authority is no longer utilized to serve the ultimate goal of seeking objective truth. It has been transformed into an instrument of political control and punishment, pressuring and eliminating independent investigative forces within the organization, in parallel with constructing an unofficial immunity perimeter to protect political allies outside the organization. Second, Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book is currently executing exactly its most original and sinister function, a form of political asset. The executive branch's resolute blockade of the accomplice list and refusal to expand the investigative scope into the cabinet ranks is evidence showing this file is being actively exploited to maintain the power structure and force absolute loyalty among the upper echelon as long as the identities of those in the Black Book remain concealed. It will continue to be a sword of Damocles hanging over the heads of compromised individuals, compelling them to maintain their submission to the control system. The legal data publicly disclosed on the Senate floor is irrefutable proof of the formation of a stratified justice system. In this institutional model, the law no longer plays the role of the measure of fairness, but has become a customizable tool, ready to be bent and reinterpreted for the purpose of protecting the individuals sitting at the absolute pinnacle of the pyramid of power. We sincerely thank you for taking the time to follow our in-depth analysis bulletin. We invite you to leave your legal perspectives and personal assessments of this event in the comments section. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel to continue accompanying us in the process of dissecting complex political files in the future. Goodbye, and see you again.